I'm 73 years old, and yesterday it took me 8 minutes to walk from my living room to my front door. 8 minutes to cross maybe 15 feet of floor. Not because I was distracted or stopping to do something, because I was moving so slowly, so carefully, watching every single step, that I'd become afraid to walk at normal speed in my own home. And when I finally reached that door, breathing like I'd run a race, hands trembling from the tension of extreme caution, I realized something that made my heart sink. I'm not being careful anymore. I'm being controlled by fear. And when fear dictates how you move through your own house, independence has already started slipping away. It started maybe 5 or 6 months ago with me just being more cautious. I'd had a close call, tripped on the edge of a rug and caught myself on a chair. Nothing dramatic, didn't fall. But that moment of losing balance, that split second of thinking I was going down, it stayed with me. Made me more aware. Made me watch my feet more. Made me slow down. And that seemed smart. Reasonable. The kind of adjustment you make as you age. But the caution grew. What started as watching my feet became studying every step. What started as slowing down became moving at a glacial pace. What started as being careful became being terrified. And I didn't even notice it happening because each day was just slightly more cautious than the one before. Gradual enough that I could pretend it was normal. I live alone. I've lived alone for 10 years, since my husband died. And living alone after 70 means there's no one there to notice when caution becomes paralysis. No one to say, you're moving too slowly. This isn't normal. Something's wrong. No one to see you creeping through your own house like you're crossing a frozen lake. You can tell yourself you're just being smart, and there's no one there to contradict you. Have you noticed this happening to you? Moving slower and slower, telling yourself it's just caution, when really it's fear. I stopped walking normally, stopped taking regular strides. Now I shuffle. Slide my feet along the floor rather than lifting them. Keep my center of gravity low. Arms out slightly for balance. Eyes locked on the ground in front of me. Every movement calculated to minimize the chance of tripping. Every step an exercise in extreme caution. When was the last time you walked through your house without thinking about it? Without watching every step and calculating every movement? Getting from room to room became an ordeal. I'd plan the route, identify things to hold on to along the way. Wall here, chair back there, table ledge, door frame, mapping out handholds, like I was rock climbing instead of just walking to the kitchen. And if there was a stretch with nothing to grip, I'd sometimes just not go. Would stay where I was rather than cross that dangerous open space. I started leaving things where they fell. Dropped the remote control, it stayed on the floor. Knocked over a magazine, it stayed there. Because bending down to pick things up meant taking my eyes off where I was walking, meant shifting my weight, meant doing something other than the careful, controlled movement that kept me safe. So, my house filled with debris I was too afraid to retrieve. Do you find yourself stepping over things instead of picking them up? Living around the messes you're too frightened to clean? My daughter came to visit and watched me cross the room. Really watched. Saw how long it took. Saw the shuffling steps and the white-knuckle grip on furniture. Saw me moving through my own home like an invalid. She asked if my legs were hurting and I said no. She asked if I was dizzy and I said no. She asked why I was moving so slowly and I couldn't answer. Because saying I'm terrified of falling felt like admitting too much. Like confessing that I'd become someone who couldn't function in her own house anymore. She stayed for dinner and watched me navigate from kitchen to table carrying a plate. watched it take 3 minutes, watched me stop twice to rest and regroup, watched me place the plate down with shaking hands and sink into the chair like I'd completed a marathon, and I could see the worry on her face. Could see her wondering if her mother was still safe living alone. After she left, I thought about what she'd seen. Thought about how I must have looked. This old woman creeping through her house, terrified of her own flaws, taking forever to accomplish the smallest movements, and I felt ashamed. Ashamed that I'd become this. Ashamed that fear had taken over so completely that I couldn't even walk normally anymore. But the shame wasn't enough to make me change. Because the fear was bigger than the shame. The fear of falling was so enormous, so all-consuming, that moving slowly felt like the only way to survive. Even if that survival meant living in constant terror. Even if it meant my world was shrinking to just the few paths I could navigate with maximum caution and minimum risk. I stopped going out. Too many variables, too many places to trip, too many situations where I couldn't control every element. Better to stay home where I knew every hazard and could avoid them all by moving slowly enough. So I ordered groceries, cancelled appointments, declined invitations, became completely isolated because the outside world required moving at speeds I was no longer capable of. My son called and asked when I'd last left the house. I had to think about it. 2 weeks? 3? I'd lost track. He asked if I was okay, and I said yes. But I wasn't okay. I was trapped. Trapped in my own house by fear so intense that normal movement had become impossible. That elderly living alone had turned into elderly imprisoned by terror. He came over the next day and watched me for an hour. Just watched. Saw how I moved. Saw the fear on my face every time I had to cross a room. Saw me gripping furniture and walls like I was climbing a cliff. And he said what I'd been avoiding thinking. He said, "Mum, this isn't normal. This isn't just being careful. You're terrified. And living like this, alone. It's not safe." And he was right. Because moving this slowly, this fearfully, I wasn't safer. I was creating new dangers. My legs were getting weaker from lack of normal movement. My balance was getting worse from never challenging it. My world was shrinking so small that I was losing the capability to do anything beyond creep through my house in perpetual fear. We talked about the fear, about where it came from, about that moment months ago when I almost fell, about how that one close call had grown in my mind until it controlled everything, about how fear of falling had become bigger than the actual risk of falling, about how protecting myself had turned into imprisoning myself. He made me go to the doctor, not for medication, for evaluation, for physical therapy to work on balance and strength and confidence, for someone to tell me whether this fear was based in reality or whether I'd let it grow beyond what the actual risk warranted. And the therapist said both. Said yes, I needed to be careful, but also that I'd become so overly cautious that I was actually making myself less safe, not more. We worked on walking normally again. Just regular steps, regular speed, eyes forward instead of glued to the ground, arms swinging instead of out for balance. All the things I used to do without thinking but had forgotten how to do because fear had reprogrammed my entire body to move in this slow, terrified way. It's been 6 weeks now. I'm walking faster. Not normal speed yet, but faster. More confidently. I still catch myself shuffling sometimes. Still feel that pull to slow down and watch every step. But I'm fighting it. I'm choosing to move at reasonable speeds, even though it's scary. I'm choosing function over fear. I'm learning that when you start rushing less because you're afraid to trip, that's not wisdom. That's fear taking control. And when fear controls how you move through your own house, when it slows you down so much that normal activities become ordeals, that's not protection. That's prison. That's losing independence to anxiety rather than to actual inability. And I'm learning that aging and independence require balance. Real balance. Between caution and confidence. Between protecting yourself and paralyzing yourself. Between being smart and being scared. And finding that balance. Rebuilding confidence while maintaining appropriate caution. That's the work. That's what lets you stay independent instead of becoming trapped by fear. If you're moving slower and slower, if you're watching every step in terror, if walking through your own house has become an ordeal of extreme caution, please hear what I'm saying. This is serious. This is fear stealing your life. This is how you lose independence, not to your body, but to your mind. And it can be addressed. It can be worked on. It can get better if you're willing to admit it's a problem. There's still time to work with physical therapists. There's still time to rebuild confidence and strength. There's still time to find the right balance between caution and capability. But there's not unlimited time. And letting fear control you until you're completely paralyzed, until you can't move normally at all, that's when you really lose everything. So please, look at how you're moving. Are you being appropriately careful? Or are you being controlled by fear? Because there's a difference. And recognizing that difference, getting help to address the fear while maintaining real safety, that's how you protect actual independence. If this resonated with you, if you're moving through life in terror, I hope you'll subscribe to this channel. Share this with someone who might be paralyzed by the same fear. Leave a comment about your experience, because you're not alone. Hit the like button if this felt real. We need to talk about fear. We need to face it before it steals our ability to live. That's something I'm learning one braver step at a time.